Hello, my friends. Welcome to Marvel Mayhem, the series where I review every single Marvel film or television series, not just from the MCU, but ever, because I think Marvel has made a very interesting contribution to pop culture over the years. And today we're going to talk about 1989's The Punisher, starring Dolph Lundgren and Louis Gossett Jr. And it's a very weird movie to talk about because due to the problems of its distributor, it never had a very wide release. Um, but it was released on home video and it became a hit. So uh, it cost $9 million to make, and it actually made $30 million, which for 1989 is really amazing considering it didn't have a wide release. So kind of like a cult hit. And the story of the Punisher movie is basically that there's a guy named Frank Castle, and he is waging a one man guerrilla campaign against the mafia. And because the mafia has been really weakened, the Yakuza comes to this city and they're trying to take control. So, to take control of the city, they kidnap some of uh, the children of these mafia figures to get the mafia to do what they want. And the the situation kind of devolves, and Frank is finally captured because um, Frank is being pursued by his one-time partner, and Dolph Lundgren plays Castle, and his partner is played by Lou Gossett Jr. And Lou Gossett Jr. is just a really great 80s actor who does a really great job with the material that he's given, but I don't think that we have actors like that anymore because there used to be like a lot of roles on television and film for that kind of thing, but I think they've actually reduced the work of actors like that. But anyway, back to the movie. So the movie starts very darkly, um, but it has a really great introduction theme music. And they say that the Punisher has killed over 125 people, which is crazy because that's serial killer numbers. That's much higher than the most productive? Can you say productive serial killer or the worst serial killer? And the movie has like this theme of, is Castle actually a good guy for what he's doing or is he a bad guy? And I think that's why the movie holds up, because the movie doesn't directly answer that question. Like, we as the audience, we kind of like, we enjoy the violence and the explosions and stuff, but there is this question that keeps lingering. Um, then there's a lot of other action scenes that happen in the beginning, and there's um, over the top action, and there's an explosion that happens where Frank walks away where he probably wouldn't walk away. Um, I said about the plot mainly in the beginning, but the uh, the thing that happens where uh, there's lots of like illogical moments. The the criminals act very unrealistically. There's very strange setups, and the plot holes are also really, really weird. So, if you don't know Frank Castle's backstory, basically his family was killed in a car bomb by the mafia, and because he was a police officer, and then he goes on this guerrilla campaign against them, which kind of doesn't make a lot of sense in this movie because for one reason he is a police officer. He's not a special forces soldier. So how does he get all of this training to, you know, carry on this one man war? That's the first thing that doesn't make any sense. The other thing is that he lives in the sewer and yet he has his own sort of branded merchandise that he uses in some of these attacks, which also doesn't make a lot of sense. Um, the main thing that doesn't the main plot hole I would say is there's when the Yakuza kidnap the children, Frank is arrested by the police, and then he is broken out of police custody by the mafia because the mafia want him to go against the Yakuza. Frank does go against the Yakuza, and then immediately the mafia turns on Frank, which is like, if you were so smart that you could defeat Frank, then why couldn't you defeat the Yakuza? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. The next thing is that Frank's character, there's not a lot of development for his character, whereas we get sort of a lot of the backstory of Franco, who was the mafia guy, and even the Yakuza boss. We get their backstories, but we don't get a lot of development about Frank, apart from the fact that his family has been brutally murdered. And then there's another thing which is a little bit ridiculous, is that Frank, they give this, and I think Dolph Lundgren does a very good job with this movie, but they give him sort of like a stubble look, which is put on by makeup. And then the makeup extends to his ears, like right here. So whose stubble extends to your ears? It's so weird. And then in the end, the police kind of figure out that he's been using the sewers as his base. But then in the movie, he goes back to the sewers. The sewers are not infinite. If somebody has a big base to kill criminals there, you'll probably be able to find them. The one thing that, the one good part about this movie, apart from the over the top violence, and I think the movie itself kind of reminds me a lot of Howard the Duck, surprisingly, because Howard the Duck is so over the top. And this is over the top in a more nihilistic sort of way, which I which makes it a good movie to watch actually. It's a nihilistic over the top movie. You can put it on and you can ask like that question, like, what is the cost of revenge? Is revenge ever justified? Is there ever too much revenge? So it's kind of interesting, but there is this one good scene in the movie where finally Berkowitz, who is Lou Gossett Jr.'s character, captures Castle, and he's interrogating him because they were friends before in the force, and he says something like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense that you are doing this so much." And Castle's like, "Well, I'm doing it for revenge." And Berkowitz asks him, "Well, when will you stop?" And Castle's like, "When there's no more criminals left." Which is kind of chilling, actually, because he starts with people who murdered his family, and then he goes on to people who just work for the mafia. And I would assume, I've never been in the mafia, so I don't know, but I would assume that not everybody who works in the mafia is a murderer, right? You might have like accountants, you might even have like people who work for mafia owned properties like janitors or something, or waitresses? Do you kill those people too because they're technically criminals? It reminds me of this sci-fi story that I read once, which I forgot what the title is, but basically in that movie, in that story, the the character decides to kill evil people. So he goes back and he kills Hitler. He comes back and he's like, oh, what about Stalin? So he kills Stalin. And he's like, what about Mao? And then eventually it turns out that he is history's worst killer because he's killed all of these people. And he doesn't actually change anything about human nature. He just becomes the bad guy. So I think that's the ultimate reality of this movie. So it's messy, it's illogical, it's often ridiculous, but it's entertaining. So it follows these revenge tropes while adding chaotic and absurd elements. Um, Despite its flaws, as I said, it contains one genuinely strong dramatic scene plus a bunch of fun explosions. So if you like action movies, and I'm not sure if it's the best portrayal of the Punisher character, but it's certainly an interesting one. So what do you think about The Punisher from 1989? Leave your thoughts in the comment section. If you like what I do, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Bye-bye.